I'm Tom Murphy, and this is Trinidad Now on Trinidad Times Television. This is our second segment with Karen Griego. Karen, as we said before, and I talked about the questions, we're going to do this segment on economic development. So I'm just going to jump in with the questions. What are the most pressing issues facing Trinidad?
I believe the most pressing issue as far as ED is concerned in Trinidad is to sustain our momentum that we've gotten over the past 2 or 3 years. I think what's happened in the past in Trinidad is that we have hung our hat on one industry. Coal, King Coal, you know, I'm here because of coal. Nobody ever thought coal would go away. Well, it has. Same with gas and oil, did the same thing to Trinidad. And believe it or not, a community can survive. Take a look at Trinidad, we've survived. But I truly believe that our economic development will depend deeply on the tourism industry in Trinidad. I mean, we have a jewel with those buildings in downtown Trinidad. We need to continue to preserve those buildings and put good, prosperous businesses in there. I think that can be achieved by, one, expanding like we talked about before with the marijuana industry, using it for medicinal purposes. But I mean, the work with space to create is going to be a natural. You know, I think there's going to be a lot of people moving into Trinidad for the space to create project, not only in the construction, but living here to do their artwork. You know, Santa Fe and the usual art communities are the cost of living is so far out of line in those communities. And Trinidad's the whole enchilada. That's how I look at Trinidad. As a tourism community, look at the natural beauty we have, the natural resources we have, the buildings we have. I mean, it all comes together. And when you say tourist, I'm not only talking about the people that want to come in and look for a few minutes and leave. I'm talking about the art tourism. I'm talking about the natural, the trails, people that like the great outdoors. I mean, we have a state park over right next to us that's gorgeous. I mean, and you don't realize that tourism goes all year long. It has a bump in the summer, but now we're starting hunting season. I consider hunters that come into the community as tourists because they're coming here for a specific reason. And I believe that all those combined, I think that's going to be what's going to be, in the long run, the savior of Trinidad.
And like you said, we have Denver to the north, Santa Fe to the south, and Albuquerque, Springs, and Pueblo. We're really the spoke of the wheel. And as one of the candidates remind me, Dana Crawford and those guys started a club, the 191 Club or whatever, or I don't know if it's club, but we're 191 miles from Denver and 191 miles from either Albuquerque or Santa Fe. I forget which one.
Well, you know, I'm in a business that I see. I'm right there where the abstract companies are at. So I see the activity going on there. And then I see activity coming into my business. And you can't believe where people are moving from to Trinidad, Denver. You know, people my age at my class reunion, there's not too many people of my age that stayed in Trinidad. Well, now the people that moved to Denver thinking, gee, I wish we gave them a trolley ride, and they said, gee, I wish I would have stayed here. This is a cute little town.
Right.
Well, you know, the hustle and bustle of Denver is great, I guess, for some people, but that's not everybody's.
When you're younger, it is. I wanted to be there.
But you cannot
now.
The people from California that are coming to Trinidad, the quality of life we have in this community is so special. Right. I mean, 9 minutes to go to the grocery store. Where you can get from your block to the first main intersection in Denver in 9 minutes. And I think that speaks volumes about what we have to offer.
Right. Well, everybody talks about it, even at city council and everything. There's a feeling right now that we lost for a while that things are getting better. Just in talking to people, it's like they feel it, that we're coming back up instead of on our way down, and people are leaving and going to Texas and North Dakota and for the jobs.
You can see it because
Yeah.
we lost a big segment of our population
Right.
when gas and oil went down.
Yeah.
But we have a different type of citizen moving into Trinidad now. They're not coming here specifically for jobs. The tech industry is doing wonderful things for places like Trinidad.
Right.
Because you can work in Trinidad and your office is in someplace else, in the country, in the world. Makes no
Right.
difference.
If you even have an office, you just work out of your home.
Right.
My new computer guy just, goes to business and does what he
Exactly.
does.
We must have the same computer guy.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Blonde guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's pretty incredible.
It's amazing.
Because you're intimidated, and he's like, click, and it's done. You're like, how do you?
I know. I get people calling me from Denver and saying, I can't get the service in a Denver agency like I can in a Trinidad agency.
Yeah.
And we're still small town.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, it is. Karen, if you could fast forward or travel in time, what would be different from today, from 4 years from now? If you had a magic wand, where would we be? What would be happening here?
I would like to see more businesses downtown. I think I'd like to see our population grow a smidgen more,
Okay.
maybe 5,000-10,000 more people, just enough so we can all sustain from within instead of having to depend on somebody else to do it for us.
Right.
I got a Facebook message, a private message on Facebook, upset about one of my platforms on for my campaign, which is I want to find out what's going on with code and ordinance enforcement, because this is my feeling on it as a business person and somebody that owns property downtown.
Mm-hmm.
I want Trinidad to start acting like we're a tourist community. We need to polish our image a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make downtown as inviting as possible. I'd like to see a few more restaurants downtown. People, because I'm the greatest ambassador for Trinidad. I walk the dogs on Sunday morning downtown. And I won't even wait for people to approach me. I'll say, hey, are you looking for some place to eat? Because I
Right.
don't want them to get back on the interstate. You know?
Right.
So I give them suggestions on where to go. But I think we need a few more businesses, unique shops.
Right.
You start talking, I went to a couple of the downtown groups, and those people are passionate about their businesses.
Right.
That's going to be the core. That's going to be the anchor of Trinidad. I was here when all the big names were in downtown Trinidad.
Pennies and
Pennies. Nobody even knows what Montgomery Ward is
Right.
anymore. But
Right.
all the big stores, well, they abandon us for the bigger metro areas. So if anything we have to learn is we have to sustain
Right.
within our own.
Right. So, as you know, we all have phones. I got interrupted. You're talking about code enforcement. Will you say that again? What were you talking about? Code enforcement? I had to turn my phone
Well,
off.
Sorry
about that.
Okay,
We're always. It's like you go into church and they're like, "Turn off your
No.
phone." I didn't turn my phone off.
Just from observation, I've noticed that there's some businesses that aren't maintained.
Right.
The weed issue is a problem. 5 Points, I understand now that the city is going to try and redevelop 5 Points.
A round point, isn't it? Or not round point, a roundabout.
A roundabout. I wrote a
Right.
letter in approval or support of that. But I mean, that's a main intersection going down into Trinidad. I've watched people that go off the interstate right there where the old JRs used to be, go down a block, don't see any place to eat or anything that's tourist related in that block, and then they go right back up on the interstate again. I'd like to see that area, and I know the city's working on it, so that's
Right.
not an issue. But I just want to see things nicer downtown. I want people to start maintaining their property. It's a fair thing to do, Tom. When
Right.
we live in a community, and my business is taken care of, but the guy next door isn't. And I'm not talking, I understand about major improvements to a building. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking cleanliness, getting rid of the weeds, making sure it's painted and you have a nice, it's called curb appeal.
Right.
And that's what I'm talking about. I'm going to talk to the code enforcement officer in the next week because I don't want him, number one, to feel slighted that I'm pointing fingers at him, but I want to learn what the problem is. Because whether I'm on council or not on council, I think this is an issue that John Q. Citizen can take care of ourselves.
Okay. Karen, and as I explained earlier, you may be familiar with some of these questions, if not, but how familiar are you with the city budget? And what are the city's main sources and revenues and expenditures?
I am, my husband has given me City Council 101, which is in between working insurance and taking care of a family. So needless to say, my education is lacking, but he's teaching me a few things. But I understand that some departments are revenue generating and some are not. Some depend on sales tax. So it's just a natural. If we increase sales within the city of Trinidad, then our sales tax revenues go up.
Okay. Well, as I explained to you, I wanted to ask everybody the same questions.
Okay.
And it's of course, if you've not been there, you may not know, but you know, with your past experience, you'll learn.
Yes.
So.
You know, I have a general idea.
I'm just trying to protect myself so people don't say,
Amen.
you were trying to get that one and not the other one. It's like, no, I'm at least asking.
As far as the budget is concerned, I've never dealt with a budget that huge. But, you know, when I worked on tourism board and when I worked on Noah's Ark, you're a jack of all trades when you're on those boards. You do all the work. But here's where city staff comes in. You have a lot of ancillary people working with you to help you make those decisions. You've got a wealth of information at City Hall. You ask them. All you have to do is take the initiative to ask, okay, why are we asking for this much money? Why isn't this money spent on this? You have a support staff that's amazing in City Hall.
Right. And Karen, not that anybody's going to see this, but we're going to take one short break and I'm going to change the tape.
Okay.
Oh, we'll just go back to this. Okay, Karen, so the next question, and I'm going to read this. Industry recruitment is very difficult for rural communities, especially ones where healthcare, education, and workforce development systems are below par. What types of businesses would you like to attract to Trinidad?
I think, you know, the hospital is talking about remodeling their facility. I think healthcare is healthcare occupations. This is a wonderful place to have healthcare occupations open at Mount Carmel. We have a couple of options, and with the communities, the junior college here, that's a natural. Technology, I'd love to have things like that. And as we mentioned in the segment before, I think there's wide open for jobs in use with medicinal marijuana and research. I'd love to see research and development of products meant solely for medicinal use.
Well, I think you're the first one to talk about medical, and that's actually interesting because I think you're right. You know, many years ago I was involved with the YMCA, and they said the pillars of a community are education, recreation, and healthcare. And I think you're dead on that with the healthcare. My sister-in-law just graduated with a nursing degree, so her career is going to open up to her, and I think she's moving on with that. You know, as far as career advancement in education, still here at the junior college. Mm-hmm. So you're right, and I got to give a shout out. You're the first one to talk about healthcare.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I've been, you know, with the ACA debates over the past couple of years and trying to repeal. I'm not going into national politics,
right?
Because I barely know what I'm doing on a local level. But Ed's been intimately associated with healthcare because he writes and he knows he knows more about the system than I do. But I've seen what healthcare issues do to a community. If you don't have the appropriate facilities, that hospital is a main factor. The facilities we have here, nobody's going to come here unless we have good health care. You know, I talked to Carolyn Johnson just last week, and she told me what the plans were for the renovation of the hospital. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And Mr. Cimino, that's another.
I'm going to pause this and I'll edit this out, but this is the second time. I think I know who this is. 1 second. Malairs?
Hi, Mr. Murphy. This is Jennifer Lujan calling for Bernard Matoya.
Yeah.
And I was calling to find out if everything was ready for me to pick up.
Michelle came by and got the book and the cards and stuff yesterday. Yeah, and I just assumed that it was okay. Oh boy. But the death certificates I should have either later this afternoon or tomorrow morning.
Okay, so then I should check back with you.
Yeah. Have him check with Michelle B. She picked up the book and the cards and in the laminated folders.
Okay. I will do that right now. Thank you.
Okay, all right, bye.
Bye-bye.
When somebody calls twice and it's a family member, I'll edit this out.
That's all right, not a problem.
But you were talking about Ed and the health care.
Right. Right. I've seen what a difference the ACA has done in people's lives in our community, and it's very impressive.
Again, not to get a national, but it's been beneficial?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as I told you earlier, I went many years without health care, so it's a difficult issue and an
Well,
expensive issue.
We were in a business, the fast food industry, that is the hardest thing for fast food is benefits,
Right?
health benefits, and it's very costly.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody does it. But, okay, the growth in the tourism economy has been outstanding over the last 2 years. Do you support the new tourism economy, and what will you do to continue to promote the tourism industry?
Well, for all the reasons that I mentioned before, absolutely. Being on the first tourism board, you know, I see what the local economy has improved because of tourism. I mean, you know, we are a quasi-tourism community.
Right.
I mean, for all the reasons I mentioned, the beauty, the quality of life. I mean, people love it.
Right.
And you need to talk to the people that have. I'm kind of out of that loop now because I'm not in a tourism-related industry anymore. But I have friends on Main Street that they've had business this past summer that has over, I don't know how many, 100% over what they did in prior summers. You know, I knew just by looking at the numbers of people downtown that it had increased, but I didn't know it had increased that much, and it's fantastic.
Right.
Best summer tourism we had.
I know it seems like you've answered these before, but I put some questions in general, some in economic development. So it's just maybe a different version of the question.
Okay.
And it's restating the same thing.
That's all
so,
right. That's
so just
I thought maybe you were
as
testing my memory.
no, it's as I ask these questions, it's like, okay, that's a general question, that's an economic development question, that's
No.
a management question. It just
I think tourism grouped in a whole, you know, tourism is the nucleus with
Right.
all these little sprouts coming out.
Yeah.
You know, tourism
If-
to different people.
I could have combined all the marijuana questions, all this, but I just thought, okay,
That's
as
all right.
I wrote it out, this is what I came up with.
You're fine.
Next question. The city created an economic development department 2 years ago. What ideas would you have for economic development if elected?
Well,
And again, you've stated some of this, but it's just
I
another
think
version of the question.
ED is going to be involved a lot in art, the art industry in Trinidad. You know, that's going to be a natural.
Right.
They've done things that people that don't realize they do as far as giving money, like they were the big push for the entertainment district. That was a huge success for the Blues Festival. You know, they do things like that that will get people, not only the locals to come downtown and to do business in Trinidad, but our tourist community as well.
Well, I know because Paula's part of the Blues Fest,
Uh-huh.
that the infusion that the city gave really helped them breathe and
Yes,
be
it
able
did.
to focus on doing it instead of worrying all the time about financially what's going to happen. So I know it's a big positive.
Well, you know, it was a boon, like ED, what they did with the entertainment district, done well any organization or any business in Trinidad can use that entertainment district to their benefit.
Right.
And it showcased Trinidad in a way that nothing else could, downtown Trinidad.
Right. Well, and I think hiring Jonathan Taylor, to my knowledge and recollection, I think he's the first person that they've hired to focus on economic development. I think we've kind of sat back and waited for people to knock on our door.
Well, I think we have been, and I'm talking generally as a
Right.
community. I'm not talking or trying to say it's one individual or city government. We collectively, as a community, have been complacent when it comes to trying to improve the economy in Trinidad. Somebody else come in and do it for us.
Right.
You know, it's been that mentality. And ED of the city bringing an ED director on and designating him for that purpose is wonderful.
Right. Last year, the city economic development focus was on stabilizing our downtown to create an attractive atmosphere for commercial businesses. They have rental assistance, facade redevelopment grants, Main Street patios, entertainment districts. I mean, this is kind of a softball question, but what's your opinion on all those?
I think they're great.
Okay.
You know, I've heard so many negative things about the patios. But if you go to any metro area, those patios are prevalent. And unfortunately, we're a historic downtown. We don't have a lot of area to put those patios within a structure. But I think they're great. You know, I took a picture in a small community in Italy where those patios are all over. And the traffic lane was this much. Well, people use bicycles in Italy, but I mean, I think it's a great idea. And you know how I feel about the entertainment district.
Right.
I mean, you know, the trick was how to have something like the Blues Fest, but still benefit downtown merchants, and that was the perfect solution.
Right. Yeah, I've heard pro and con on the patios, and I think it's great. They're just, no matter what you do in a small community, sometimes any change is difficult.
Well, you know, change is difficult, and people have a tendency not to talk to one another.
Right.
We don't communicate. I complain to you,
Right.
and that's the extent of it.
Right.
But I give it time. You
Right.
know, give it time. We're trying.
Right.
We have a patio across. I'm sorry, not a patio, a piano across in the little pocket park.
Right.
And every once in a while, you'll hear somebody playing something.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
It's great.
All right. I saw that. I like the way they painted it. It looks good.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Not a lot of people realize this, but from 2015 to 2017, our vacancy downtown in businesses or buildings has gone down from 61% to 29%. What do you think that's attributable to?
It's got to be the marijuana. But for one, and I'm
Right.
not going to give all the accolades to
Right.
the marijuana industry. That coupled with Mr. Cimino's efforts to revitalize downtown Trinidad. He's massive. He's a massive influence in downtown Trinidad. And people are finally realizing if Mr. Cimino believes in us, we better start believing in ourselves too.
Right.
And I've seen there's one vacant building on the next block of Commercial Street, and I think it just got sold last week.
Right. You know, I'm biased because Paula went to work for Jay after the paper closed. And I was at one of their sales meetings in January, February for the previous year. Mm-hmm. And Jay's son, Mike, had said at that point they'd spent up to $30 million. And I've heard it may be, by the time they're done, $100 million. That's significant and huge.
Yes.
So big shout out to him. I've done it in other
Huge.
segments. Thank you,
Huge.
Jay.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cimino, because like
Yeah.
I mentioned before, that renovation of the 400 block of North Commercial Street is,
Yeah.
and he's got this beautiful dealership down there. It's wonderful.
Paula's commute to work is going to be, I'm going to put her on a skateboard and shove her down the hill.
Hey, but getting home is going to be a little
It's
harder.
a little uphill, but she has a Fitbit and she's got to put in some steps. So
I'll bring her home on my way home.
she's got to walk. Again, going back to what you're just talking about, though, not Jay, but the marijuana money, this has been an issue. I know because I was at the retreat that they had at the La Quinta a couple months ago. And some people in town were saying they've made decisions on how the marijuana money is going to be spent. And I know that that's not finalized. But what do you think? Where should the marijuana money be spent?
Well, I think by ordinance, I believe, it has to be spent on capital improvement. People have to understand that capital improvement is different than wages or, increasing workforce. It's got to be done by capital improvement. I've heard a lot of people upset, like we mentioned before with the Noah's Ark money, but they have got to understand that Noah's Ark is in a huge pinch to find some place to move, because where they're at now was sold.
Mm-hmm.
Then they went to the Hughes Lumber Building. Well, now that's possibly sold. I mean, there's a contract. It
Right.
has to be, the city has to, it's a partnership, it should be. But I think if I'm elected to city council, I will be able to make decisions. I mean, I'm going to be a little bit out of the loop, but I can, as far as what they've discussed, like in the retreat that you're
Right.
talking about. But it's based on what's the needs of the community at this
Right.
point. I have started going to city council meetings. And Mr. Valentine's talking about redoing the sewer and water lines. And from talking to other city council people are upset because they're doing that instead of doing the streets and things like that, but they don't understand. There's other issues that have to be taken care of first before you can redo the streets and
Yeah.
curbs and
I try not to interject my opinion, but I think $400,000 isn't enough for
Well,
for Noah's. And I've been there, and I'm like, I've done construction.
it's not. And what's good about Noah's Ark is they have a transfer program. They transfer animals in, get them adoption ready, and then they send them out to the big metro areas. Have a huge appetite for shelter dogs.
Oh.
Trinidad, we're getting there, but all the animals that come into Noah's, they'd be down there for a long time if it
Right.
weren't for transferring them out.
Mm-hmm.
They're generating money. I know they're committed to putting their own money into that project.
Okay, interesting. Again, this is more for an incumbent person that's been at some of these meetings, but our water losses from our source to the city is 40%. What plans are in place to repair, and how can we not fall behind again?
Well, I hate to say I don't know, but I don't know.
Okay, no, that's fine. But again, as I want people to know, I'm trying to be fair. Some people are going to know, and some people aren't.
Understood.
What happens when the marijuana money goes away?
Well, that's where our complacency was a problem before. I'm thinking, with the artist tourist industry coming in, I think that's going to take over a big portion of the revenues coming into Trinidad. But I think we need to expand on the medicinal side
Okay.
of marijuana too. We can't depend on marijuana like we've done in the past. Those are fatal mistakes we made,
Right,
and thank God that the community survived those mistakes.
right.
That we just sat down and said, it'll take, put it in God's hands. Well,
Right.
you have to start working it, and I think there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of outside interest in Trinidad. You mentioned Dana Crawford. You see what she did to Lodo, and if the right interest is done in Trinidad, that could be a mini Lodo.
Right. One of the things that I've talked about with some other people too, and my take, again, my opinion, with the marijuana, at least buildings that were never going to be touched. And as an owner of a historic building, I know how much it takes. So when it does bust, at least the electrical, the plumbing, the foundation, and things are brought back up to code. That's
Well,
huge.
For the 400 block of, we could sit there and name off all the buildings that were vacant.
Mm-hmm.
Those buildings are usable. They're income producing. If the marijuana business goes down, or if they decide to move, or consumers' interest in marijuana kind of recedes, at least you'll have that building with all those improvements down
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Another question that is near and dear to people who are lifelong residents, and they had a meeting last week, and I accidentally missed it because I spaced that out. In 12 years, I've maybe missed 5 meetings a month, in filming all these. But Monument Lake is a big issue. Do you have any solutions for Monument Lake?
I think it, you know, I don't want to be an expert on anything, but I'm wondering out loud if Monument Lake is being advertised correctly, if we've gotten, I know Mr. Rob's done a great job with management of the lake, but I have no solutions at this point. I've got to educate myself more into knowing what's going on up there. I know they're talking about who they're going to lease it or what's going to happen because Mr. Rob won't be there after this year, but that's a huge, beautiful area that needs to be addressed for sure.
Right. Last question of this segment, again, because you haven't been at some of these meetings, but through the years, there have been numerous meetings between city and county elected officials. Not sure that there's been any successes, so maybe the question I should ask is, do you see the city and the county working together? Is that part of your plan to facilitate some growth in the community?
Absolutely. Where there's commonalities, I mean, Trinidad sits in Los Animas County. You know, I see the pain that the county's going through with their financial situation right now. And you don't want to see that affected because it affects all of us. You know, anytime you go up to the city, to the county, the courthouse, you can see what that effect has been. I know when Ed was on city council, they had combined meetings. But sometimes people have to understand, it might be for commonality. If there's a common issue or common problem that both of us have, yes, we definitely need to agree. But I think that sometimes the issues that face the county aren't the same issues that face the city. But I think as being a good partner in the community, we have to. It wouldn't hurt to continue those meetings if both entities would like to do that.
Well, excellent. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back for the last segment.
Okay. Is this when the commercial airs?
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Tom Murphy, and this is Trinidad Now on Trinidad Times Television. Thank you. Be right back.